5 Fundamental Measures of Cancer Prevention. Number 1357, VMT Sharp 701, September 16, 2025. Gerald C Hsu, EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Cancers. Preface. Over the past 16 years of my medical research, I have confirmed one principle across diabetes, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, stroke, and cancer: prevention is more important than treatment. Modern American medicine and pharmacy are the most advanced in the world, yet U.S. life expectancy, 77 years, remains worse than Japan, 85, and South Korea, 83. The paradox is explained by lifestyle. Advanced rescue technology cannot erase decades of accumulated stress from obesity, hyperglycemia, poor diet, inactivity, insufficient sleep, and emotional stress. These 5 primary factors have therefore been selected as the focus of this generalized cancer risks and prevention study. My recent stroke on June 21, 2025 illustrates this reality. If I had begun strict lifestyle management in the mid-1990s, rather than waiting until 2010, I would not have carried irreversible calcification into my cerebral microvessels. Once such damage is embedded, it carries equal weight with new stresses and cannot fade away. One doctor once told me that doctors do not truly save lives, they stabilize emergencies. The real foundation for survival is laid by decades of preventive choices. Cancer risk follows the same pathway. Tumors rarely appear overnight. They arise from the long-term accumulation of metabolic and lifestyle stresses. Once diagnosed, treatment is often costly, painful, and uncertain. In the United States, this burden is compounded by the structure of healthcare system itself. Profit maximization within the pharmaceutical industry, combined with complex and expensive administrative interactions among hospitals, insurers, and regulators, has pushed U.S. healthcare costs to the highest in the world, nearly 1/5 of national GDP. Cancer care is among the most expensive categories, often beyond the reach of poorer families. For them, a cancer diagnosis too often brings not only medical suffering, but also financial tragedy. This study applies my viscoplastic medicine theory, VMT, and uses 15 years of longitudinal data on 4 biomarkers and 6 lifestyle factors. The analysis model quantifies cumulative risk, energy, and distinguishes between reversible and irreversible stresses. More importantly, it demonstrates that prevention, not treatment, is the decisive factor in reducing cancer risk and sustaining long-term health. We all reap what we sow. Daily habits: controlling food portions, stabilizing glucose, maintaining physical activity, ensuring adequate sleep, and reducing emotional stresses, when practiced over decades, remain the strongest and most affordable defense against cancer and other chronic diseases. Cancer risk equation. The cancer risk index was constructed as a weighted sum of 5 normalized inputs. Body weight, BMI, and visceral fat percent carried the largest weighting factor of 30%. Type 2 diabetes status, FPG and EAG, carried 25%. Food portion size contributed 20%. Walking steps of exercise contributed 15%. Stress and sleep together contributed the remaining 10%. The cancer risk equation is: cancer risk equals 0.30 times BW, plus 0.25 times T2D, plus 0.20 times food portion, plus 0.15 times walking steps, plus 0.10 times stress and sleep. All inputs were normalized against reference healthy values before weighting. The weights reflect both pathophysiological importance and published biomedicine evidence, with obesity and glucose control recognized as 2 dominant cancer risk factors, while food intake, physical activity, and stress-sleep balance provide additional influence. VMT studies. Engineering and medicine. My early training at MIT under Professor Norman Jones introduced me to viscoplastic engineering, where the study of a few dozen materials and fewer than hundreds, structural or mechanical cases was sufficient to establish the fundamental laws of nonlinear, irreversible stress-strain behavior. The scope was naturally limited by the field itself. Materials are finite in type, and their application cases, while important, number only in the hundreds. Medicine, however, presents a far broader landscape. The human body contains more than 300 distinct organs, tissues, and anatomical structures when broken down into functional units. In addition, the International Classification of Diseases, ICD-11, maintained by the WHO, documents more than 50,000 recognized medical conditions, though only a few thousand are common in practice. Each organ, disease, and lifestyle factor, often numbering in the hundreds or thousands, can be regarded as a distinct viscoplastic energy case. By developing an automatic VMT AI program, I have been able to analyze over 700 biomedical scenarios on my iPhone device in just 4.5 years. This productivity does not reflect a change in the underlying math physics principles, but rather the sheer diversity of biological systems, which provides far more research opportunities for application. The contrast highlights a universal truth. Whether applied to metals under blast waves or to human organs under metabolic stress, cumulative energy and irreversible damage remain a common language. The difference lies not in effort or depth, but in the scale and complexity of the problem space. My work extends the universal viscoplastic framework into medicine, a domain where the number of cases is orders of magnitude larger, making higher volume analyses both possible and necessary. Reports on obesity, diabetes, and cancer. Statistically and globally, the obesity group, 3.8% to 3.9%, has a higher new cancer prevalence attributable risk than the diabetes group, 2.0%. Many cancer patients have both obesity and diabetes, since the two conditions often overlap through shared mechanisms such as insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, and hormonal imbalances. In 2025, Generation Z, ages 10 to 28, born 1997 to 2012 or 2015, shows about 33% of men and 30% of women living with obesity, mostly due to diet habits such as fast food. Obesity accounts for about 3.8 to 3.9% of all new cancer cases worldwide, compared with about 2.0% linked to diabetes. These Generation Z obesity rates are higher than those of millennials, born 1981 to 1996, now ages 29 to 44, at the same stage of life, and are approaching the levels of Generation X, born 1965 to 1980, now ages 45 to 60. For people born in 1947, now 78 years old, like the author, obesity rates are somewhat lower, about 25 to 40%. But cancer risk is still substantial due to the impact of aging. VMT results of cancer risk. The author uses the following health levels as normalization values: BMI at 25, VF% at 16%, FPG at 90 mg per deciliter, E at G at 120 mg per deciliter, sleep score at 0.70, sleep hours at 7 hours, food portion at 1.0 kilograms for 100%, walking steps at 8,000 per day. This study uses 16% VF% as the cutoff, based on clinical references that set healthy ranges up to this level, even though some sources use a more tightly standard of 13%. VMT energy analysis results and conclusions. My overall cancer risk trend, 2011 to 2025. The annual cancer risk index starts very high in 2011, approximately 163, and shows a steady decline, reaching approximately 73 in 2025. The most dramatic improvement occurs between 2011 and 2016, with cancer risk reduced by 46%. After 2016, the decline stabilizes, and the risk remains much lower and relatively flat. By 2025, the risk index is less than half of its 2011 level, indicating long-term risk reduction. Role of inputs: my VMT energy contributions, weight, 19%, type 2 diabetes, glucose, 25%, food, 22%, steps, 21%, and sleep and stress, 13%. The two strongest drivers are diabetes glucose and food portion size, followed closely by physical activity. Sleep and stress are smaller but still meaningful factors. Surprisingly, body weight contributes less than diabetes, which reflects the major impact of obesity reduction. BMI dropped from 31 in 2011 to 24 in 2025. Generational longitudinal context: the data show that sustained improvements in visceral fat percent, glucose, E at G, FPG, and walking steps correlate with the drop in my cancer risk. The cancer risk model confirms that lifestyle interventions can reshape my long-term cancer risk trajectories, even after decades of exposure. 2015 to 2016 appears to be the turning point. After that year, cancer risk drops below 100 and stabilizes in the low 70 range. Key takeaway: my VMT energy analysis demonstrates that cancer risk is not fixed by genetics or aging alone. Instead, it can be sharply reduced through consistent lifestyle, improvements in glucose control, diet and portion control, weight reduction, and persistent exercise. The VMT energy model highlights that diabetes, glucose management, and food portion control are the dominant levers in reducing risk, at least in this case. Appendix: VMT framework. The viscoplastic medicine theory, VMT, adapts nonlinear stress strain principles from engineering materials science to biomedical science. In this VMT model, strain represents the disease outcome of interest, e.g., cancer risk index. Stress represents external or internal drivers, e.g., glucose, weight, food, activity, sleep, and stress. Energy quantifies cumulative damage, separating reversible from irreversible effects. Normalization ensures comparability across individuals and time. This framework allows long-term, multifactorial diseases to be modeled as nonlinear, dynamic, and irreversible systems, capturing both short-term variability and long-term trajectories. VMT provides a scientific lens that bridges engineering principles with medical reality. making complex chronic disease risks measurable, comparable, and actionable. For details, please search Health Talk with EclaireMD on YouTube. Disclaimer: this content is for educational reference only and not medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this study freely, but it must not be edited or republished as your own.